Greetings, viewers, ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues in the studio. Welcome to another edition of our Human Resources Development and Management 101 conversation, the show that honors, respect, and celebrate our leaders in the human resources space. My name is Sam Zima. I am the producer, I am the host at Comesa Global Online Channels. This show is brought to you in partnership with the Institute of People Management, the home of the HR professionals. I'm with my colleagues, as you always know them, but I'm going to ask them to greet you, welcome our guests, and we are ready for a very, very interesting conversation with two of our most powerful leaders in the human resources field. You will get to know them just now. Over to you, my colleagues.
Thank you, Sam. It's such a great pleasure to be going into spring with this great guest. I greet all the viewers wherever they are in the world. It's such a fantastic time to be celebrating our leaders in the human resources space. Over to you, Boniwe.
Thank you so much, Jerry, and thank you so much, Sam. My name is Boniwe Danster. I'm a co-host on this show at the Human Resources Development Management 101. I host this show with my colleague George, and today we're actually going to be taking you through a great session whereby we'll be talking to our prominent HR leaders, where we're going to be learning from them, where we're going to be taking some tips and see how we actually build our human resources profession. Thank you, George.
Welcome all. Thank you very much for joining us. A very important show. And today we have very, very special guests from Bridgestone and Mercedes-Benz, and all who aspire to own vehicles will know you must use Bridgestone tires and you must drive a Mercedes-Benz. So welcome this evening. Thank you very much for joining us. And Boniwe will shoot off with our questions.
Cool. Thank you so much, George, for that. Listeners, I'm like, okay, what if I don't own a Mercedes-Benz, and what if I don't have tires from Bridgestone, right? But anyway, they remain our listeners, and we're happy that you've joined us for this session today. So probably starting with Julia, thank you so much for joining us. And I think our show really aims at actually sharing the experience, taking people through your career and your trajectory and how you have actually made it this far. And I'd like to start with you to say, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your career and the organization that you're currently working at, and how have you landed in the role that you are in today?
Great. Thank you, Boniwe and the team. My name is Julia Modise. I am the Chief People Officer for Bridgestone Southern Africa. I always start my introduction by also saying I'm a mother to two very special boys. My career in human resources started 23 years ago. Believe it or not, I joined the Edgar's group at the time as a human resources casual. And I always tell this story because there was an HR manager there called Lgbtiq, whom I approached and I said, I would really like an opportunity to work in the HR department. I have not completed my qualification, but I'd like the opportunity. She gave me the opportunity. She allowed me to run casual wages for a couple of weeks. And after that, she said, you have potential. The HR officer role is open. You're welcome to apply. I was only 19 years old. When that opportunity arose, I took it. I learned as much as possible. And of course, I ensured that I continued to study and ultimately get my qualification. I spent about 3 to 4 years in Edgar's. After 2 years, I was promoted to the HR manager position to manage a couple of stores in the south of Johannesburg. After 4 years, I decided to transition and I joined the South African Revenue Services. I thought I would have a change of industry. Regrettably, I didn't enjoy the government. You can just imagine, right? Transitioning from retail to a state-owned entity was quite different. So I then decided to move on and I joined Cummins Engine Company. It's a US-owned multinational engine company. And I would probably say after EdCon, that's where I grew the most professionally. I spent a total of 9 years at Cummins. I started as an HR manager for Southern Africa. And then after 2 years, I was given an international assignment to go and work in the US as a global HR operational excellence manager. An assignment that I did for 2 years, and I grew phenomenally, culturally. I had a taste of a different environment, a different continent. I then came back home. I was then promoted to Human Resources Director for Cummins Africa. At the time, the business was expanding outside of Southern Africa into the rest of Africa. It was really on a growth trajectory. I stayed there for about 9 years. I then decided to move on. I joined Goodyear Tires. So Bridgestone is my second tire company. So it probably means there's something I enjoy about carbon black, maybe the smell of rubber, I don't know. I held the role of HR director for Goodyear, Southern Africa. I was in the role for about 2.5 years. And then I decided, let me change and test myself out of the industrial heavy manufacturing environment. I transitioned to GrowthPoint, a listed organization, and thoroughly enjoyed my time there. It was a smaller organization, but what was great about it is that it was a listed organization, and I had great board exposure in that environment. I then decided to diversify my industry experience, and then I went to media and entertainment. I joined MultiChoice as general manager for human resources for South Africa. Very, very different industry. Thoroughly enjoyed it. After 20 years, I decided to venture out of corporate human resources. I went into executive search and leadership advisory. I joined Spencer Stewart, and then I very quickly realized that I need to go back to corporate. I missed being in a business, driving solutions, delivering results. I really am not a consultant, right? So I came back and I joined Bridgestone. The current CEO of Bridgestone, Jacques Fourie, worked with me at Cummins when we were both in our early 20s. And he gave me a call, and I went through the process, and that's how I landed up at Bridgestone, and thoroughly enjoying it.
That's great. It's actually quite a great journey and a vast experience that you have from different organizations, different industries, and I'm sure our listeners can actually wait to hear more, right? To you, Ndate Hotle, please also tell us about yourself as a person before an HR professional and your career journey up until where you are right now at Mercedes-Benz. George putting us under pressure for each and every one of us to drive a Merc.
Thank you very much, Bonnie, and greetings, everyone. I think George is definitely on the money. There is nothing better than a three-pointed star. So hopefully we will have more and more of you acquiring the car with a three-pointed star. Well, I'm Eddie Hotle. I hail from a dusty township of Itsoseng, which is located just outside Lgbtiq. And I always talk about the dusty township of Itsoseng because it grounds me. It really has helped shape me to be the person that I am, and also to be the kind of professional that I am. I am a father to 4 children, and I always say that they have caused me to lose most of my hair, but I love them dearly, notwithstanding. So yeah, father to 4 beautiful children. I am married, and as you will learn later on, I am an avid biker. This is something I have acquired, or a hobby I have acquired a few years ago, and I'll talk a bit about that in a short while. My journey in HR started probably slightly longer than yours, Julia, and it's a very interesting journey because I studied social sciences, and my passion at the time was on development of our communities and finding solutions to sustainable development of our communities. And I joined the Northwest Provincial Administration soon after graduating, and I served the government for about 18 months, and I was quite chuffed that I had the HR manager for one of the Denel divisions based in Potchefstroom coming to talk to me in my office at the NWPA. And I thought, wow, I've never experienced this. This must be fun. And he came to offer me an opportunity to join NASCEM, a division of Denel, a journey I enjoyed for close to 10 years, and moved from an HR officer and promoted to being an HR executive for NASCEM, which was really a very interesting part of my journey. And I remember at the time, my predecessors under the vet said to me, well, you are going to have to learn to swim on your own without me, because I was a bit unsettled about the fact that he was moving on, and I had not had enough time to learn from him. And indeed, I had to learn to swim on my own, and a journey that I thoroughly enjoyed, and really put me at the edge of finding solutions. And I think what was very critical at that point in time is that we had just transitioned into democracy, and having to put together the first skills development and employment equity plans at the time, and working in Potchefstroom, which is roughly 40 kilometers outside Ventersdorp. And for those of us who know our geography and our history, you will know that it was a very, very conservative part of our country at that point in time. So having to work together with employees and with unions, specifically the Mijnwerkersunie, as it was called at the time, and helping all of us to understand why it's important to transition, and why it's important for us to undertake the transformation journey that we were undertaking at the time. That was quite critical for me. And what stands out for me is that to this day, because of this long history of working with this particular union, but also then appreciating the fact that the individuals within the union are human beings just like me, and that we can have a personal relationship that is not necessarily defined by the different roles that we play. That became very, very critical, and that's why to this day I still have some of my very good friends in Solidarity, which is a successor to Mijnwerkersunie. I then, moved on to join BHP Billiton. I joined Samanco, their chrome or their manganese division out in the Val as an HR manager, and a journey that I also thoroughly enjoyed and brought in just after a major restructure of the business, and then having to rebuild the HR function and rebuild the organization, as it were, post the restructure, which was a challenge I thoroughly enjoyed. Like Julia, I made one mistake in my career, and that was to join the city of Johannesburg after BHP Billiton. And I thought, well, it's time for me to contribute towards building a much more professional outfit within our city. And we were brought in to help the city establish a unit which would have replaced the revenue management unit of the city, and was a wholly owned entity of the city. A very, very exciting project that we undertook, but very quickly politics won the day, and I quickly realized that that was not the place for me to be. And I then moved on to join Lonmin. Before Lonmin, I went to Lgbtiq, which is a US-based graphite manufacturing outfit out in the Val. Spent about 4.5 years there, and I moved on to Lonmin. And Lonmin was a very, very interesting case for me, and it remains a very special place in my heart, notwithstanding some of the challenges that we had to work through. And I say that because there's been quite a lot that we were able to do at Lonmin. I had the privilege of coming in as a senior manager HR for their processing division, and I led quite a number of important transformation initiatives there. I led a number of restructuring activities within Lonmin. And I moved from HR into corporate affairs, which is another area that I'm very passionate about. And in that space, had the privilege of leading the transformation of our corporate social investment portfolio. And what really stands out for me is that when we started with this journey, one of the critical challenges that we faced was every time we had to look for bursary students in local communities, we could hardly find them. And it pained me dearly that we would be able to offer, at least on an annual basis, over 100 bursaries, and that most of those went to kids from outside of the areas within which Lonmin operated at the time. And therefore, with this school transformation program that we put in place, which really touched on all aspects of education, whether it's teachers, whether it's governance, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's preparation of the learners, and so on and so forth. And working through that program, we were able over the years to ensure that by the time I left Lonmin, at least 70% or between 70 and 80% of the bursars that we had in our books came from local communities. And, it gives me a great sense of pride that we were able to do that, but we were able to do that together with the communities around the operations at Lonmin. Of course, most people talk about August 2012 as the most important or the most critical moment. Yes, it is a critical moment because that week in August is the week that changed our lives. And I call it a week because there is a lot that has happened throughout that week that we don't always talk about. And it is a week that really changed our lives. It is a week that catapulted us very quickly into a space where we realized that the toolbox that we have as HR practitioners, or the toolbox that we have as a business, wasn't adequate, and therefore we needed to, think on our feet. We needed to find alternative ways of one, resolving the strike in August 2012, and two, rebuild the organization post that strike, because you can't have the same organization after the pain that we endured during that week that changed our lives. And three, that you are then able to reposition the organization, moving forward. And I had the privilege of leading the process of negotiating the resolution of the strike, and it took quite a lot from us. It involved many long days. It involved personal security risk for some of us, but in the end, it was really about, well, this problem has to be resolved. You cannot wish it away. And the only way in which it can and will be resolved is in us talking to each other. So, realizing that we cannot afford to continue with the impasse. And that really led us to finding a solution to the August 2012 strike. And what really, stands out for me as well is that by the time, by 2016, 2017, when I decided that it was time for me to move on, we went through a very painful process, yes, but we went through also a very important moment with the union, where we looked each other in the eye and we were brutally honest and frank about what really happened and what really led to the impasse, and how we may have each contributed to that, and how do we avoid ever finding ourselves in that situation again. And very pleased that that process ended up with a relationship charter that we put in place, and it pleases me greatly that we then went through a number of years of no strike, no production stoppages, and we were able to heal. We were able to really bring all the parties together. And today, we hardly hear about strikes in that part of the world. Yes, Lonmin has moved on, acquired by Sibanye, but you don't hear some of the gory stories that we had back in 2012. I then moved on to Mercedes-Benz, where I am today, and a great company to work for. As I said earlier on, nothing better than the three-pointed star. And it's a journey that I'm enjoying, at least for just over 4.5 years now, going on 5 years. It doesn't feel like 5 years at all, because of number of exciting things that we have been able to do in the last 5 years. And really what's important for me with my role at Mercedes-Benz is just like all the other organizations, you learn very quickly that when you sit in the exco or in the board, you are sitting there as an equal to your peers. And you are sitting there with a responsibility for people management or for HR, but you are an executive director just like anyone else. And therefore you have the responsibility to work together with your peers in building the organization, in resolving the problems that need to be resolved, and that together you are able to shape the organization into something much bigger than it is or than it would have been. So Mercedes-Benz South Africa has been an exciting part of the journey for me. We have worked very hard on digitalization, on bringing in technology into HR. We have, over the last 4 years, been certified as a top employer. The last 2 years, as the top OEM employer in the country. So we keep pushing ourselves to greater heights. And it's a journey that I'm thoroughly enjoying. And we are now at the phase which is quite interesting for the automotive industry, which is a massive transformation of the industry. And you hear a lot about moving towards electrification of the vehicles. You hear a lot about some of the mega trends, shared mobility, connectivity, and so on and so forth. So very, very interesting phase of transformation of the industry. And it puts us as HR professionals right at the center of this transformation, because we are called upon to help the organization bring forward solutions that enable us position ourselves in the space of transformation. And what better opportunity did we have, in spite of it being a massive blow to the economy? But COVID, the silver lining with COVID has been to place us as HR professionals again right at the center of managing our businesses, as we found different solutions to manage and to navigate the COVID space. Maybe let me pause there for now, Boniwe. Otherwise, if I don't, I can talk the whole day. Thank you very much.
Thank you for reining yourself in. But thank you so much for sharing your journey and listening to the both of you. It actually shows that, one doesn't get to a certain level of their profession without working hard, without being intentional, and also without actually having passion for what you do. And I think what comes out from the both of you, it's the passion that you have for the people, for the profession, and for the communities that you guys serve in. I think two things that actually caught my greatest attention with your story, it's around being given an opportunity under Dinell, and the person that approached you and gave you the opportunity, soon thereafter the person left. So it's one, and somehow you feel so lost when such happens, because I can relate. But the beauty of it, it's also a reminder that one is actually capable. We just need those people who believe in us to give us an opportunity for us to show what we are capable of. And also, it's around the Marikana story. It's something that is also close to my heart. And I love what you said, to say that particular week transformed a lot in our country around labor relations, around employee relations. We've even seen the evolution of the legislation itself because of Marikana, as painful as it was, and it remains to be, but it has actually paved a good labor relations conversations around unions and employee relations generally in our country. And thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that. But moving right along, maybe staying still with you, Ntate Kgotle, it's like I mentioned earlier that our show is mainly around human resource development and management 101, the basics, right? The people that are listening to us right now, it's people that are aspiring to get into the profession. It's people that are very junior. It's people that are in middle management and they actually want to grow, right? So if it's someone listening to us at this moment, what advice would you give them in terms of them having to build a solid profession or getting into human resources? What advice would you give them? What is it that they need to do? And what is it that you have done, to get yourself where you are?
Thanks, Boniwe. Yes, indeed, if I just reflect very briefly on the comment you made about Denel, yes, was very interesting, but also troubling me, because I thought, this is your first gig, and will you really make it? And very quickly helped me realize that you have what it takes to succeed. And that's where I would start with, just reflecting on the question that you're raising. All of us have what it takes to succeed. The difference is in those of us that embrace the opportunities that we get, and we run with them and we use them fully. Because in the end, it isn't enough for you to have the opportunity. The opportunity can be given to you. But what is more critical is, what do you do with that opportunity? What value do you derive out of that opportunity? What value do you aid out of that opportunity? And how do you leverage that opportunity to hone your skills as a professional? So important for you as you are starting the journey of HR. Firstly, are you passionate about people? And if you are, you have to realize very quickly that it is not just about the passion. The passion helps you, helps propel you, helps fuel a number of things that you are able to do. So, have a passion for people, because without that, I don't think that you will enjoy the HR journey. Secondly, realize that HR is not about you being, separated from the business. What I mean by that is we always look at HR as something that is out there, and the business is out there. HR is actually an integral part of the business, because without people, none of our businesses will be successful. So you are there to enable business success through people management solutions. And that's why I said earlier on, you have to look at yourself, especially if you are an executive within an organization. You are at the same level as your peers. They are looking to you to bring forward people management solutions. They are looking to you to help them navigate the very difficult at times space of managing people relations and deriving maximum value out of people. So it's a journey that at times is difficult, especially if I go back to the Lonmin days and some of the days in the past. It can be a painful journey, but it's a very, very rewarding journey, because in the end, if I look back at some of the things that we have been able to do, if I look back and think about the number of young people that we have been able to help through whether it's a bursary program or whatever intervention that we put in place, if I look back and think about solutions that we have been able to put in place in helping the business to transform, the digitalization of a number of HR platforms right here at Mercedes-Benz South Africa, and a number of other things that we have been able to do. If I look back at those things, I say, well, it's job well done, but it's success that you build on for the next phase of your journey, because you can never rest as an HR professional. Same as human beings, you are always striving for more and more and more. So you use the successes that you gain over the years as building blocks for even greater heights that you are hoping to soar in future. So it's enjoyable. You can have fun in it. It will bring you a lot of gray hairs if you still have a bit of hair. Certainly for some of us, we don't. You can look at Dr. Gule, and that's the result of managing people over the years. But it's a very rewarding journey indeed.
Thank you so much. And back to you, Julia. I think on your side, what would you be saying to those aspiring people who are looking into getting into the HR professional, and maybe share some of your key lessons that have actually landed you to where you are today?
Absolutely. Thank you. Before I answer that, I'm going to just say to my brother here, AB, I also don't have hair, not by choice, but so it happens to females too. So, Boniwe, I think, what it takes, particularly as you aspire to get into the people space, I really don't like to call it HR. It's about being a sponge. Yeah, I use that analogy because you must be willing to absorb as much learnings as possible, right? You need to open yourself up to understand your business, the business that you will be getting into. You cannot be an effective people business partner without the solid understanding of the business that you're partnering with, the business that you're building people solutions for. So, the concept of being a sponge and of being a lifelong learner, right? So learning never ever stops, right? Even after 2-3 decades in the field, one is still very open to learn from those that are far more experienced and from those that are less experienced, because they come with brilliant out of the box ideas that we wouldn't necessarily think of, right? I also think talent is not enough. Yeah, talent alone is insufficient to get you anywhere in life. I think it has to be talent that is accompanied by having the right attitude. Remember, there's a saying within the people space as well, that we hire for attitude and we train for skills. Yeah, we cannot train a bad attitude. For those aspiring, attitude, openness to learning is everything. And as my grandmother would say, hard work has never ever killed anyone. Right? Hard work has never ever killed anyone. So those are the three that I would put forward as very, very key. In fact, for any professional, even those that are outside the people space, if you have that armor of being a sponge, having the right attitude, being a lifelong learner, and hard work, that will certainly propel your career forward. And I see it with a couple of the initiatives that we have put in place at Bridgestone. Our graduate program through Yes for Youth, and the various learnership opportunities that we have at any given point in time. We have about 160 youths in our business. They're either going through a trade certification program, or they are, in any of the functional areas on a graduate program. I always say to them, be open to learning and seize opportunities given to you. If there is a project that's being put forth, raise your hand and say, I will run with that project. You may not know half of what you need to do, but just the openness to try and to give it your best shot. Sometimes that's effectively all that you need.
Cool. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. George?
In my home, my hairless head is affectionately referred to as a solar panel. I think I'm in good company.
Right.
Abby, you mentioned something interesting around the role that COVID played in, shall we use the word, enhancing the importance of people in any organization. Perhaps maybe start with you, Juliet. Tell us what the lessons you learned from COVID, what has that done for your business, and some of the initiatives that you did for Bridgestone. And similarly, Abby, if you could address that as well.
Thank you, George. So interestingly, I joined Bridgestone in April, so just a week after level 5 lockdown, right? So one, I joined the organization remotely myself. And one of the first, solutions I had to come up with is how do we manage COVID, right? So a couple of things that came to the fore was that it's important in an organization to build a strong level of agility, right? That strong level where people are able to adjust and embrace whatever circumstances they found themselves in, right? And COVID was one of them, right? So we did a couple of practical things, like really bringing our smart working, we call it smart working, or others call it remote working or flexible working. We brought it to the fore. We ensured that we equip each and every single employee with the necessary tools to be able to work remotely. We then also, leaders didn't know how to lead virtually. So we needed to build the capability for leaders to be able to continue to lead their teams, more importantly, to continue to drive engagement remotely, which is a skill set that, most didn't have, right? So we immediately collaborated with an external provider to roll out, leading virtual teams training for our leaders. And the actual training itself was also held virtually, right? To help them drive, continue to drive performance, but more importantly, engagement. So we don't lose people while they are working remotely. And thirdly, to demonstrate care. Because COVID was one of those that isolated us. It isolated human beings. We were surrounded by darkness in the form of death, in the form of ill health. And in addition to that, people were also insecure, right? Insecure about their future employment, right? How secure was that? That's also, one of the things that was a huge, huge challenge. We also encouraged our leaders to have, check-in sessions with their teams, and to also hold their Friday fun afternoons, right? So Fridays, everyone, gets onto a Zoom call with their beverage of choice, and there's no business being discussed there, but it's really just checking in with people. How are you doing? What are you doing for fun? Those were the important things that we did. In addition to that, we also provided our leaders with basic counseling skills, because, grief was everywhere, right? Grief was everywhere. Having to manage teams that have lost colleagues, team members that have lost family, for them to understand and be able to say, if an employee is going through this is how I best support them through this difficult process that they are going with. And then from a hardcore business perspective, we also then had to come up with solutions about how do we keep the business whole, right? Because the business was not operating, right? So how do we come up with, solutions to maintain costs, and ensure that we keep the business whole, right, for the future sustainability of the business, right? And we came up with a couple of things, right? Retirement fund contribution, holidays, to make sure that employees we're not contributing, at least for those couple of months, so that we kept them whole. And where we had to come up with very benign, compensation sacrifices, we were able to also do that, but carefully doing it in such a way that employees are also somewhat kept whole, as much as we're trying to ensure the sustainability of the business. And then, of course, one can't talk about COVID without talking about health, safety, well-being, mental well-being of employees, right? We, in a manufacturing environment, safety is number one, right? We don't do anything without having a safety moment. But we had to now take it a step further and say it's not just about, you know, observing the COVID-19 protocols, ensuring the workplace is safe, but how do we ensure that all our team members are able to take care of their mental well-being? And you know, another key focus was also around destigmatizing mental health. Because for those individuals who are susceptible to mental health, isolation made it worse, right? Being confined to a space made it even more difficult. So I would say those were a couple of key priorities that we worked on.
Okay. And before I move to Abby, maybe on a personal level, what lessons did you pick up from the COVID pandemic?
Yeah. So for me personally, as a person, right? So not even as a professional, as a person, I realized just how much of a people person I am and how much of a social being I am. So I personally struggled with isolation. And I heard you saying you're not so used to people coming to the office, but I'm actually one of those people who still prefers to come to the office, you know, stop and have coffee. So it was just confirmation for me of how much human interaction I need personally as Julia Modise. And then I think I also learned the importance of spending time with your loved ones, checking in with those that you do care about, because I think, if anything, you know, COVID has brought to reality the fact that life is short. And what you have today, you may not necessarily have tomorrow. So living, you know, your life to the fullest was a key lesson for me.
Thank you. And Abby, what lessons for you?
Yeah,
and what
well, I
did
mean, that's
Mercedes-Benz do for the market?
That's a very good point to pick up from Julia. And indeed, I think if there's one thing that stands out for me is the significance of mental health. And that became a lot more pronounced, especially during level 5 and then level 4 and somewhat into level 3 lockdown last year. And I say that because, like you, my dear sister, the recognition or realization that we are social beings became quite clear and quite pronounced in my life during those days. And I remember that, there were so many things that we were able to do as a family because we were all at the same place, and that helped all of us to make sense of the lockdown, to make sense of this massive challenge that we are all facing and that we don't know when it's going to end, how is it going to end, will it ever end, and how will we be after that, firstly as a human being, as an individual, as a family, and also because we started hearing stories about this person that has passed on, that one that has passed on, and so on. So the significance of mental health and investing as much as we can at a personal level, at a family level, to enhance our mental health, to get us into a space where we are able to step out and interact with others outside and bring a lot of value in those interactions. That, for me, was absolutely critical. That's why, one of the things that my wife and I ended up doing was to join the so-called 25 push-up challenge. She started first and, do 25 push-ups for 25 days. and I joined thereafter, and we ended up mastering it, and we ended up continuing with that for a period of time, because the message about the importance of mental health that carried was for me absolutely critical. And as I did the challenge, I did it for people close to me that I know were struggling with mental health issues at the time. Some of them much closer within my family, and I did it for others in my work or in my wider network that I knew struggled with mental health challenges. So that's the first point I think that's important for me about COVID. If we bring it into the workspace, for us it was a very critical time, because we were right in the middle of ramping down the old C class. By that I mean that we were getting ready to start moving into building the new C class, right? So which means the old C class we had to ramp down, and also meant that we needed to accelerate the build project for the plant as we prepared the plant for the new C class. So being in lockdown, right in the middle of a ramp down and right in the middle of a project which is intended to help build capacity within the plant for the new C class, that was a massive challenge. And it was a massive challenge because it meant that, whereas in the past, we would have had to bring in some experts, from our sister plants elsewhere in the world to help us with the project phase. We were not able to do that because of travel restrictions brought about by COVID, and therefore moving very swiftly into how do we manage the project without having the ability to bring people to South Africa became absolutely critical. And leveraging the virtual platform for that became absolutely critical. So ramping down the old C class, getting the plant ready for the new C class, and boom, you are now in COVID space. So how do you manage that difficult space? But it also brought about a lot of anxiety with our people, because as you will recall, we had the address by the president. Tomorrow you are in lockdown level 5 and you are not allowed to move around. And that was it. We didn't have the luxury of time as we would always prefer. Give us a bit of a warning so that we get our house in order. We had none. You had to hit the ground running, get your house in order. And the analogy that I used at the time was this car had to start moving, even if it was incomplete. So whether it meant that I ran on some bad tires until Julia provided me with tires, or whether it meant that I had to run with a number of parts of the vehicle not being there, the vehicle had to run, and we were able to do that. And for me, that just demonstrated how resilient we are as a people, and how agile we can be when called to be agile. So we're very resilient, we're very agile, and move very quickly into that space. So some of the things that we did are exactly the same as what Bridgestone would have done. Firstly, my biggest concern was how do we pay our people? Because for me, I was very clear about one thing, that we cannot put the added pressure on our people about how they are going to be paid, or about our people not going home without any pay. So securing tools to ensure that our people were paid during that difficult period was absolutely critical, and that was one of the major priorities that I had to work through with the business. Secondly, managing the health and safety of our people during this difficult period. which meant that we needed to be a lot closer to people, notwithstanding the fact that we are not able to physically meet, we're not able to physically hug and talk to each other. We needed to ensure that we have very robust health and safety systems in place, very quickly assembled the crisis management team, very quickly put the communication system in place where we kept in touch with our people, especially throughout the first 2 or 3 hard lockdown periods. But then also to balance that with the need for a sustainable business beyond COVID-19, because you cannot insist on paying people because that money has to come from somewhere. You cannot insist on paying without having a conversation at about the same time about how do we ensure sustainable business beyond COVID-19, which was why some of the most important steps that we took, such as compensation sacrifices that we needed to take as leaders for a period of time, were absolutely critical. That's why sacrifices that some of our people had to take over a period of time were absolutely critical. And that's why it was also important to make sure that we bring in all the support, all the wisdom that our people have to ensure that we are able to build a business that will be able to sustain itself beyond COVID-19. So those would be some of the key things that I say were critical. You want a sustainable business, but that sustainable business is not just possible without your people. And therefore, in ensuring the health and safety of people, investing in the communication programs that we put out, investing in the support systems that we put in place for our people, whether it was through the employee assistance program or whatever mechanisms that we put in place, ensuring that those systems are in place and they are working and they're supporting our people and they are supporting them together with their families. That became absolutely critical, because in the end, if you as a husband test positive and your wife works with us, she is impacted. And if the husband passes on, she is impacted. And therefore, ensuring that that support was there became absolutely critical. Lastly, what we also got to realize was much as we are doing a number of these things with our people and for our people, they live within communities. And those communities were equally battling with the pressures of COVID-19, which really led us to put a number of community interventions in place as well. For example, we had a paint shop produce sanitizers. How fantastic, to have our people within our plant deciding, well, we have this and that tool that we could use to develop or to produce sanitizers, and to then produce those sanitizers and have those sanitizers being shared with the kids in our schools as schools were opening up after the hard lockdown. That was one of the most important steps to do. Face shields that we produced through our 3D tools in our plant, that became absolutely critical. The opportunity that we had in availing some of our vehicles, and if I recall correctly, we availed some of our X-class units at the time to do community mobilization on COVID-19. That became absolutely critical. And then partnering with Gift of the Givers at the time, specifically for those families that were badly impacted by the lockdown, and enabling them to put food on the table. That became so critical. So there's quite a number of things that we did together with our partners in the community space, which really built on the strong story that we are building about ensuring proper support for our people through the COVID period, and ensuring that as we do that, we don't lose sight of building a sustainable business beyond COVID.
Truly impressive. Truly impressive. I was actually going to ask you about your corporate affairs head. So, but you've gone ahead of us there. But any lessons around that in terms of your relationship with your communities coming out of COVID?
We cannot be successful as an organization if we are inward focused only, without thinking about the communities around which we operate, and which is really, part of the exciting, package of my role, because my role doesn't only look at people within the organization; it also looks at how do we build strong relationships with our partners in the community. And this involves building a very strong relationship, for example, with the local municipality, with government organization, with non-government organizations, and so on and so forth. And I think, if anything, COVID has really put to light, once again, the importance of sustainable relations between business and communities. Because in the end, as I've said in past occasions, in the end, you are as successful as a business as the success that you are seeing in our community. And if you think about the fact that South Africa sits with a massive challenge of unemployment, I think the latest numbers are 34% unemployment, or just over 44% with the extended definition. This is a ticking time bomb. And if we don't address it, it will come to destroy whatever it is that we are trying to build, outside of ensuring that we've got sustainable communities around us. And as we do that, if you have Mercedes-Benz doing that, you have Bridgestone with their fantastic program doing that, you have the next company doing that, very quickly the cumulative impact of that intervention helps us in ensuring that we are able to create sustainable communities around the operations. And with those sustainable communities, we are then able to launch whatever these massive programs that the different businesses may have to advance themselves and to ensure that they remain successful. So you do need solid relationships with your communities. You need solid relationships with your stakeholders, and you need to work together with them to find solutions. So you cannot, as a business, bring down solutions, right? You have to work together with the stakeholders to find solutions. Of course, we bring with us some of the knowledge, some of the expertise that we have, but we also realize that we don't know it all. We need our partners in the community, in civil society, to work together with us in finding solutions and working together in implementing these solutions.
Dr. Gule, I see you have brought us buckets of wisdom with these two people.
Thanks, George.
What can you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, we have fantastic leaders here, and we're so grateful to have them, and we have them for a season. That this is what they are reminding us of: live to the fullest. And I hope that our HR practitioners listening there, it's one of the things that we pick, that in whatever job we find ourselves doing, we really need to do it with passion and with commitment. I have a couple of questions for our leaders today. Julia, I have the simplest question, but an interesting question in terms, you have been in many places and both of you have worked. I mean, I know, Abby, you also go to Germany from time to time. That's where your SQ is as Mercedes-Benz. But Julia, when you travel all these places that you have been, can you just identify for us 3 places and the cuisines that you enjoyed there? I'm asking this question to the both of you.
All right, so that's a fun question. So I mean, I will start with the US, right? Because I got to spend about 2.5 years there, and I must say nothing beats an American steak from Indianapolis. So I thoroughly enjoyed that. And then in my time traveling within Europe as well, I would say what I used to enjoy the most is all the divine pastries from France in particular. And then I spent a little bit of time in Dubai, and in Dubai, I must say it was not necessarily cuisine, but it was fashion. Fashion and just the good life that I really grew to appreciate in my time there. And I think also just walking away with an appreciation of the different cultures, right? Just how people live and you know the nuances that you can't find when you are Google searching, but you really just experience them. So, you know, I guess another nugget is that when you do travel, and, you know, most of us only started really traveling properly for business. When you do, make sure you set time aside for some sightseeing, some cultural experiences, and for me, of course, a bit of shopping doesn't hurt. Thank you.
AB, you?
Oh, Julia, retail therapy. Well, a number of places that I've been that are quite interesting to me. Of course, Germany. That's where I travel most of the time in my current role. Nothing that beats the Spätzle, the German Spätzle. Don't say this aloud. I am not a beer fanatic, but there's just something about German beer that will make you want to have it each time that you're there. So those would probably be the 2 that stand out. Of course, I mean I also love the bread. Their bread is different. I've not seen that bread anywhere else. So yeah. Few dishes, German dishes that I really, really love. And of course, German beer is something that I truly enjoy. I also enjoy traveling, being in China. And for me, China is more than just about cuisine, but it's about exposure to what is possible. If you are working very, very hard to building a solid story, a solid case for a successful country. Yes, some of us look at China and say, well, it isn't a democracy and all those things that we say about it. But guess what? If you've had the privilege of being in China several times, as I have been, and seeing how that country has developed massively over the last 10, 15 years, for me, it just shows what the scope is if we got our act together as South Africa. And if we as South Africa focused collectively on building a very, very strong country. So that's what I probably draw from China. And it is, for me, a very heartwarming story, because if I look at our plant in China, which is one of the biggest in the world, and the fact that it is run by a South African, and a South African who ran the Mercedes-Benz plant in East London, and he's doing a fantastic job in China. You then see that it is possible for us as South Africans to also succeed in the global space. And then, of course, I have been to a few other places, and Dubai probably stands out also for the retail therapy that you spoke about, Julia. But in the main, for me, I also look out for cuisine, and as I said, what stands out for me is the Spätzle in Germany, and that I enjoy every time I'm there.
I have this early on in your discussion, in your talks, both of you mentioned the fact that certain people, you were at the early part of our transformation as a country. Can you talk about that period? Because we're back into diversity, equity, and inclusion. What happened? I thought we were on track, we're coming all right. So we have now this problem of once again not really experiencing that well, managing this transformation well. What can you say? I'll start with you, Julia. What are you experiencing as a professional in the people management space around this issue of diversity and inclusion and equity right now?
Yeah, Dr. Gule, maybe, for me, starting right at the beginning, as I said, the lady who saw potential in me when I didn't know that I had any potential was Nicole Gierschik, a white lady at the time. And the one thing that she taught me very, very early on in my career as a people professional is to focus on building diverse teams. And when I look at where I am today and where I have come through, I think it always starts with leadership commitment, right? And it starts with building a very strong business case for diversity, inclusion, as well as belonging. And I've just started this journey with Bridgestone, where we've just finalized. We call it our DIB strategy and plan, which effectively talks to our business case for diversity, right? So diversity is our strength as a business. Inclusion is our commitment, right? So it's as much as it's important to bring the diverse individuals into the organization, there has to be commitment to ensure that those individuals are included and there is no revolving door. The third piece is around belonging, where we say that we embrace each and every individual, regardless of who they are, what they look like. And I use an analogy, right, that diversity is inviting someone to the party. Inclusion is asking the person to choose music, right? So they are included and their favorite music is also included. And belonging is having that same person dancing as though nobody's watching, right? And I use that analogy every time to try and explain this complex diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And I think we also need to move away, Dr. Gule, from compliance. So employment equity is phenomenal. We need to comply as a business. I think that goes without saying. But we need to build diverse organizations because it is simply the right thing to do, and it helps us drive innovation, and it helps us solve very complex business challenges that you would otherwise not be able to solve if you only have 10 males in the room, right? Since I joined, the CEO and I have built a very diverse leadership team. So 50% of our executive team members are Black and females. Yeah. So we have a very, very diverse team. Our CFO is a Black Indian. Our head of legal compliance and risk, Black female. Our sales consumer director is a Black female. Myself, I'm a Black female. Our operations director is a Black male, right? So we've not only come up with the strategy with these great words, but we've also demonstrated it, right? And for a entire organization, 30%, our leadership, so when you go down below EXCO, 30% of our leadership cohort is females. And, I'm also very, very proud to say that 4 of us in the organization were in the Gender Mainstreaming Awards. And my colleague Tandeka has won the Regional Positive Role Model Gender Mainstreaming Award for multinationals, and our CEO is actually in the finalists of the Gender Mainstreaming Awards. So it is so important, and as with anything, if you don't measure it, nobody cares about it, right? So it has to be visible, it has to be measurable, but it does not happen without leadership commitment. And I'm very proud to be part of Bridgestone. We're the only tire manufacturer that has a level 3 triple BEE rating, right? If you look at our ownership score alone, we scored 24.9 points out of a possible 25. Right, so we don't only pay lip service to this, we very, very committed, and we measure it. We ensure that people is also very much a part of each leader's scorecard, and we measure it, right? And we also make sure to show and tell. Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. Abi, what is your experience with diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Well, firstly, I think that I always move off the base within the Mercedes space. Move off the base that says we are operating virtually in all regions of the world as a brand. So, we build cars in China, we build cars in the US, we build cars in Germany, we build cars in Hungary, we build cars here in South Africa. So, if you move off that base that we already have a diverse sort of platform, we are already realizing the importance of having a diverse production platform, a diverse business that runs across all regions of the world. It makes it part of the DNA to be a diverse organization. Of course, within a South African space, what worries me a lot at times is that we are ticking the box, and we are primarily looking at how do I get to level 2, level 1, or whatever it is. And that's why, at times I am a bit controversial about these triple B, double E levels. They mean nothing to me unless they are backed up by deliberate, intentional efforts by businesses to embrace diversity and inclusion, to realize that the business case for D&I is quite strong. You will never be able to succeed if you have one group of people only in the organization. And therefore, that's something that we need to really look at. So move away from the compliance and the tick box exercise mode into a meaningful conversation about diversity and inclusion. And then, of course, move away from that meaningful conversation into practical things that you are doing as an organization to implement D&I, whether it is through, as it is in our case, through our pipelines, targeting 60% female with our pipelines, which enables us to ensure that we are able to build stronger talent pipelines than we would have built in the past. And this means, whether we're taking people for internships, whether we're taking people for learnerships, whether we're taking people for graduate development programs, whether we're taking people for bursary development program, whatever talent pipeline development measures that we're putting in place, targeting at least about 60% female for those initiatives is absolutely critical. But also meaningful steps that we are taking to change the way we are structured today and ensure that we continually increase the level of female representation as one of the key elements, but also ensure that we have diversity insofar as race is concerned. That is absolutely critical. The one element that we have not done a lot on, or as a nation, and that I feel we are still lacking on, is in how we are addressing the LGBTIQ matters. We talk about them, but are we actively putting steps in place to ensure that we remove the stigma or the labels that the LGBTQI community always carries when they move around? So, when you see me participating, for example, in the Pride movement, which we do, and which I do proudly every year, it's not because, I'm doing it because it gives us good PR or anything, but it is in us wanting to demonstrate as leaders that this is something that we hold dearly, this is something that we feel very strongly about, and this is something that we really need to ensure that we begin to embrace in our community. The last point on diversity and inclusion, and this is a point that I'm very passionate about. I am a father to 3 beautiful girls. And the extent of gender-based violence that we are seeing in our society is a real concern. And it is something that will, take us away from addressing some of the bigger ticket items, such as D&I, and ensuring that we embrace it. We have to take meaningful steps to address this. And I, publish a bi-weekly letter to my team, and there is not one of those that miss at least a comment from me about how I, detest gender-based violence. And for me, I'm looking at it at a personal level. If you are perpetrating gender-based violence, it could be my daughter, one of my 3 daughters. It could be my wife. It could be my 2 sisters. It could be my aunt. It could be my mother. It could be my colleague, Julia, that you are unleashing this violence to. And it has to stop. And it takes us as leaders, especially us as men, it takes us standing up boldly and making sure that we bring an end to gender-based violence.
Maybe I wouldn't say it better than you have said it, my brother. It's such, the points that both of you are raising around diversity and inclusion and belonging, Julia, you said. I mean, in the space where we work away, you were working mostly from home. And we know at the beginning of the lockdowns what happened. And the gender-based violence thing just went up, which tells us tells a story about our society. Anyway, so you guys are more than just HR people, right? The stuff that you're talking about, it goes beyond just being an HR professional, which is great. But I'm going to hand over back now to Boniwe. And but before I do that, let me just ask this question. I mean, I don't drive a three-star thing, but I do drive something that is fast. Abby, you drive something that is even faster than a three-star thing. Why is that? Why are you a biker? What's happening? What do you enjoy from that hobby? And I'll come to you, Julia. What's your hobby? So, but let me start with Abby. What's all about this bike?
Well, nothing beats, me being on my motorbike and just being in a space where it's me, the motorbike, and the wind. And of course, the road, because that centers me a lot. Because, when you are a biker, you realize that the margin of error is that small, and therefore you need to be in the moment. You need to be in that space at that time when you are on a bike. And that is what I get the thrill from, because I forget about everything else. And I'm in that moment of being on my bike, traversing the beautiful roads of South Africa, and being able to just recenter myself and get back home after a ride, being so fulfilled that I am ready to face anything that you can throw my way. And what is even more beautiful about it is that I do this with my wife. Both of us are bikers, both of us are avid bikers, and it is something that we have acquired, or the hobby that we have acquired over the last number of years. And when I started talking about wanting to acquire a bike after Marikana, because a friend of mine said, "Hey man, I'm doing this thing, try it, maybe it will help you." I got home, and always the challenge is, are you able to convince your partner about that? And I got home and I said to my wife, "Hey, my friend and I were talking about this thing and I want to do it." And she looked at me and she said, "Yeah, it's fine, you can do that. The only condition is that you get me a bike as well." And that was it. So we do it together and we thoroughly enjoy it together. And, one of the most memorable trips that we did is a 5,500 kilometer round trip from East London to Swakopmund in Namibia and back. And we did that just the two of us on our bikes. It took us 3 days to get there. It took us 3 days there. It took us 3 days to get back. And, it really is something that I find quite fulfilling. And it helps, as I said, take me out of whatever other challenges that I'm facing, just focuses me in that moment on my bike. And that is heaven to me, Brajeri.
Thank you, Julia. What? I haven't met you on a bike on the road, but what's your hobby?
I'm trying to convince her. I am trying to convince her. She and I had a conversation recently about it. It won't be long, Brajeri, that she will be on a bike as well.
No, that's true. That's absolutely true, Dr. Gule. So I'm not a biker yet, but AB is working very hard to get me to be a biker. Together with all my colleagues that I work with, I think they're all bikers. And, we were invited to a breakfast just 3 weeks ago. The CEO hosted all of us, and they all showed up in their bikes. And The only thing that I could bring was, my sports car, because there was no other way of fitting in. So yeah, I am in the market. But as for hobbies, so I really enjoy running. Pre-COVID, I used to participate in the 21K runs. I used to travel around the country for runs. But with COVID, of course, that has come to a bit of a halt, and health as well. I think the joints are starting to complain. So I do need to find something else. But what I also enjoy is to serve. So I am an entertainer of note. I enjoy cooking. I enjoy hosting. So I always am surrounded by family and friends, and I don't mind spending a lot of time in the kitchen, cooking and hosting. Just being surrounded by good food and laughter. Yeah.
But to you, Boniwe?
Thank you so much, Jerry. And I think you've actually, taken us a detour to the left. It's so interesting to be hearing all these things like on a personal level rather than focusing on the profession itself. But I actually want to say to the two leaders, it is actually quite inspirational to hear about your journeys. And I think around your authenticity, especially when we are talking about the transformation agenda in terms of what it means to you, personally, and the contributions that you have made in your different organizations. And I always say one thing about transformation, and to Julia's point as well, it's not about the stats, it's not about legislation, right? It's intrinsic as a leader. You need to want it personally without having to balance any states. And I think the more people get that, the more the transformation agenda will be quite easy for us in our country, in our respective organization. And the work that you guys have done, it's actually quite commendable. And Julia, just to read about around Bridgestone, moving over to level 3 in such a short space, from level 7 to 4 to 3, we're waiting with bated breath for that level 1. But as we are actually getting to the close of our show, I just want to get a few points from you. What do you think, Julia, what is the future of human resources or people in the people management profession? And secondly, what is your expectations, or what do you want to see institutions like IPM do in the future, and also in developing the right and providing the right support in terms of people management? What is it that you want to see us doing in IPM? How do you want us to see contributing into the profession? And I think that would be a good closure for us, so that we know that we put in the right things in place to make sure that our profession remains on top of others.
Thank you, Boniwe. So I think the one profession that will survive all professions is the people profession, because although we have AI, we have robotics, etc., the human touch and the human interaction will always be there, right? So I see a future for the people function, beyond, the next, 100 years, because I think human beings are unique, and will always require people solutions within business environment, and also within the communities in which we live. We cannot fully replace human beings. And as for professional development, I think I would like to see more emphasis on professionalizing our profession, right? I think there's been debates around this. I think in as much as, chartered accountants go through some form of, certification process, and, there's a professional body, they're held to strong ethics. I think ultimately we need that for the people fraternity. I also believe that we need to focus a lot more on core business skills. Core business skills, because I really, really do believe that the days are gone of just understanding, the social sciences, and not necessarily being able to relate to numbers, not being able to get the commercial aspects of a business. We need well-rounded people partners. And, the core business skills are so imperative. And I think leadership, because to be quite honest, in this profession, whether you have a team or you don't, you are a leader. You are continuously coaching your executive team. You are continuously coaching, managers in the organization. So the focus on building that critical core leadership capability from a very young age, I think is important. Thank you, Boniwe.
Thank you so much, Julia. And I'm sure Dr. Gule took notes and he's going to start working on that, building a business case in terms of professionalizing our profession. Ndata Hotle, on your side, what would you want to see IPM do and contribute into our profession? And what do you think the future of human resources holds for us?
Well, we are in a very interesting phase of transformation of humanity, as we said earlier. And we will see an increase in the use of robotics, increase in the use of artificial intelligence, increase acceleration, quite frankly, in 4IR and so on and so forth. But what remains clear in my mind, and what remains clear, I think, for all of us, is that humans will remain to be quite critical, and people will remain quite critical in our businesses. And therefore, you will always, and you will have an increased interface between people and technology, through artificial intelligence and so on and so forth. And even for us as HRS people management professionals, it means that we need to learn to embrace technology a lot more. We need to embrace the value that we can get out of technology a lot more, which means that we need to look at the employee journey in our respective organizations, identify those important touch points, and there are definitely touch points that are well served by technology. And even in that regard, you will always have people, and you will always have a need for somebody with a soul who is able to look you in the eye and say, Boniwe, it is okay, and you matter to the business, and this is the contribution that you are making to the business. So I am not at all unsettled by the 4IR advancement. I'm not at all unsettled by artificial intelligence. I actually embrace it. And, some of you might have heard me in different platforms saying, if I go to our body shop, which is the first step of our production, we run that with approximately 500 robots. So it's here already. But, you have an interface with people. So the request really for IPM is a fantastic job that you are doing, Dr. Gule, in leading this very, very important part of professionalizing our space and ensuring that this remains a critical space that needs to be given a lot of attention. And of course, it's so crucial that in developing well-rounded people management professionals, as Julia said, we are also enabling us as people management professionals to fully understand the businesses that we serve. I can tell you without any doubt that the one success factor for me in the 27 or 20, to about 27 years that I've had in this space has always been a very keen interest in understanding the business, a very keen interest in knowing all the intricacies of the business, because I have seen and I know that people's solutions mean nothing if they are not answering the key challenges that the business is raising. And you can only be able to be in that space if you understand your business, if you take your place at the table. And I would really encourage you, maybe that's a parting shot, take your place. Nobody is going to dislodge you from that. Take it. And as you take it, use it to the full. And of course, with the help of institutes such as IPM, we will help build well-rounded people management professionals.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much, Julia. What a great pleasure and what a great conversation that we're having. Mr. Zima, if you can just lead us into closure, sir.
Wow. You are business leaders charged with the responsibility to lead the people agenda of the business. The lessons that you have shared with us are quite so profound. I listened attentively as you were sharing with us your journey. There are quite clear takeaways for me, and I'm sure for our viewers. You have moved from sector to sector. It might have been because of what you found out not to be what you were looking for. But in reality, you have taken the lessons with yourself as you move on from one sector to sector. I think that for me is a valuable insight that you've shared with us, that there is value in getting to know the diversity of sectors and ultimately finding the place that you will call home and bring those lessons with you. That is very, very fundamental. It's almost like you were on a journey of developing yourselves as leaders. And you have indicated, Julia, that you, and even yourself, and that it is fundamental that you understand the business you are in. People management without actually being informed by the business you are in is of no value. So I believe that it should be possible to get CEOs coming out of people management. And I'm sure that should not be impossible. And I think in many cases it does happen. We are in the era where leadership is being asked to step up. We are in a leadership crisis. But when I listen to people like yourselves, I believe that we shouldn't be having that crisis. Perhaps we haven't really looked deeper into ourselves and say, what must we do as people to really craft the leadership capabilities within ourselves? And that goes beyond just knowing the business and knowing the processes, understanding the strategies. It goes to working on ourselves, our conscious self-leadership aspect, a values-based leadership, not looking at diversity, management, inclusion, and belonging as a nice to have, but as a core to business. And I would like to conclude by saying that what I see in yourselves is people that have actually worked with local South African companies, people that have worked with multinationals, people that have worked with the parastatals or state-owned enterprises, that have worked with the private enterprise and industries, and you have become who you are because of all those. I think what you are saying to us is that this is a journey that never stops. And that is really, for me, how I will sum up the lessons that we are getting from you. And this is really the whole idea about this show. This show is about, number one, to celebrate you, because you have been there, you have seen it, and you have delivered, and you are still delivering. You're still passionate, you're still purposeful, and you're still performing. Secondly, this show is to position HR as not just one of those professions that you can just go into because it's easy to go into, but as really critical and core to where we want to take our country to. And we want people to intentionally say, I want to become an HR practitioner and becomes a leader in people areas to support the business. This show is also to challenge the thinking out there that HR doesn't matter, that HR can be done away with when we are actually not having enough resources to support employment of people. But I also want to say that it confirms, and through crises like COVID, that if we did not have people like yourselves, many organizations and even countries will have collapsed. If there's still doubt there about the role that HR plays in business, in the society, that needs to be changed. So having said that, I would like to thank you very much for really making yourselves vulnerable. We have asked you a lot of very, very personal questions when it comes to what you have done and what you haven't done. And through you, I believe that we have really educated many people out there, including ourselves. In conclusion, I would like you, just each one of you, including my colleagues, just to reflect a little bit. But for you personally, what has this show revealed to you? What has it confirmed to you, and what are you taking home, and what will you do better as a result of these conversations going forward? And I will start with, let's start with you, Ndate Khotli, and then Julia, and then of course my colleagues.
Thanks, Ndate Tsima. And once again, thank you very much. It really is a privilege for us to have this opportunity to be on this platform, on this show, to share our experiences and to really open up about the journey that we have traveled. It is really comforting to know that I'm not alone. And I know my dear sister Julia and I always, we either talk on WhatsApp or we would call each other when there is one or two or one or other business topic that we may need to have guidance on. And clearly we're not alone. And this is a journey that is well traveled by all of us, putting our hands together and putting our shoulders behind the wheel, as it were, and moving our country forward. It is possible, and I hope that the experiences that we share with you inspire you, and I hope that these experiences help shape your own journey as a people management or HR professional. And hopefully, next time we listen to you, we listen to your story, which would be much better, much stronger than our stories. And we remain available really to share our experiences, work together with you, and ensure that in the end, we continue to put our people first, and we continue to put people at the center of the success of our organizations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Julia?
Thank you, Sam. I think today my key takeaway is, the wisdom that exists just in this room of 6 people is amazing. And if we were able to reach out more, we would all be amazed at how much talent, how much wisdom, insights exists out there. And we certainly need more platforms of this nature to be able to just share, and in that sharing, there's a lot of learning. And I'm very passionate about learning. There's a lot of learning that happens. So we certainly need to do more and more of this. And thank you, COMETSA, in collaboration with IPM for the opportunity. And to our aspiring people professionals, we're here for you. We've walked the journey, and we are ready to walk or start your journey with you at any given point in time. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. We honor it indeed. My colleagues?
I think, Sam, thank you so much. I think from my side, it's just around the continuous learning. You always learn from people every time. And I must say that I have learned quite a lot today from both Julia and Ndate Hodle. And I think they've also confirmed that for myself, I'm also in the right profession. I am where I am needed, where I can be able to make a contribution. And I'm looking forward to future engagements with them and making a difference in our profession and in the organizations and the people that we serve.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very, very much for availing yourselves and being vulnerable to our listeners. And the lessons I'm sure each one of them has learned is go for it. Listen to others, learn every day, but there's always room for growth. And so thank you very, very much. And hopefully we will connect with you again in part 2 if there's a need from our viewers who want to hear more. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. Dr. Kule?
Thanks, Sam. Thank you so much, Julia and AB. I live here just feeling honored and the generosity of what you have shared with us. I always take notes, so my notes I have about 10 pages of stuff here. And thank you for developing our profession, an honorable profession. My heart always weeps when I hear people, particularly at this time when there's sexual harassment, there's GBV, and I'm a disciple for creating workspaces that excite, that inspire, because we are not in a dress rehearsal. This is the real life. You go to the job and you want to do your best. And I see you as leaders, what we have shared here, that you inspire the people that you lead, the teams that we are involved with. I'm excited, and we will do our best to make sure that we uphold this profession and its ethical standard, because this is what our country needs. This is what our continent needs, and this is what the world needs today. People that can inspire and forward, as they say, pay it forward, give the learning to others so that they can follow your path. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful for your being available today.
Thank you, Dr. Kule. To our viewers, that was our Human Resources Development and Management 101 conversation show. This was our Spring Day edition. Happy Spring Day. Enjoy the spring, and let's look forward to the next show that happens on the first Wednesday of every month. Thank you very much. Take care and be safe. Goodbye.